All right, welcome everybody to our very first podcast here. This is the Doc and Jock Show. My name is Joe Rosenthal. I am the Jock. This is Dr. Paul Ashbrook here. He is the Doc, and very lucky for us to introduce Coach Kathleen Robinson here. She is a coach out of Chabot Golf Course in Oakland. And we're actually going to kick it right over to Coach Kathleen. She's going to talk a little bit about herself. And for our very first podcast today, we're going to talk about early specialization with athletics. And specifically, we're going to dive into a little bit of golf. So Coach Kathleen, take it away.
Thank you, Joe. As Joe mentioned, my name is Kathleen Robinson. I am the owner of KMR Golf Academy. We are currently based at Lake Chabot Golf Course in Oakland. Very excited to be there. I am an LPGA teaching professional. I started as a player. I kicked it around for a number of years on some of the mini tours, the Futures Tour, the Canadian Women's Tour. So that's how I got started into it. And I had an opportunity to start teaching, kind of supplementing my income in my off season, and fell in love with the teaching and really found that was, although I still play and I still compete as much as I can, the teaching really spoke to me. And I really feel like that's kind of where my strength has been, to work with athletes of all levels and to work with their parents. And I really believe that a lot of this is about communication. And I think through communication, we can have a lot more success with all of our students. So I'm really excited to continue to have a job in this industry and have a place to call home. So I appreciate that Lake Chabot took me on after Sky West closed. Thank you guys for having me on today. I appreciate it.
Good. And then to touch on Monterey a little bit.
Well, that's where I am right now, sitting in my kitchen in Monterey. So I spend Sunday nights and Mondays and Tuesdays down here. And I'm fortunate enough to practice at Pebble Beach Practice Academy. So that's not a bad place to work on your game.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So thank you for that. So we're going to get right into it. And the very first question that I want you to elaborate on is, what is early specialization, just in general in sport? And then we're going to kind of dive into where we're seeing it with our junior golfers. So Kathleen, what is early specialization?
Well, for me, I think it's when parents make a choice to choose one specific sport that they're going to put everything into, all their time, all their resources, both financial resources, and really forego participating in any other sports or any other activities, with the hopes and the thoughts of this specialization leading to elite status, maybe for scholarships, maybe turn professional. So there's a lot of reasons why parents may choose this path. But I think that they think that if we just take one sport and we put all our energy there, the child will be successful. And I think, there's some drawbacks to that for sure. So go ahead, Coach.
We've seen this with Tiger, we've seen it with Venus, we've seen it with Serena Williams. Like, they were the ones who were kind of like the quintessential sort of early specializers. Mm-hmm. And so from your perspective, what are some of the, I guess, pros of early specialization? Because obviously there is some benefit to it, but what do you see as potential drawbacks?
Well, I mean, I think I look at the first thing is socialization. They become socially isolated. I look at repetitive injuries. I think you're putting children into an adult world too early. I think that kids need to be kids, and sports should be fun for most kids. Now, Serena and Venus are exceptions to the rules, in my opinion. And I'd say that most athletes, and if you talk to most college coaches, most of their athletes, if you talk to football coaches or basketball coaches, most of their players were all two-sport athletes of some sort. So I think that the drawback is, they just become so focused on this that they just lose track of childhood.
And play, right? I mean, that's one of the biggest points that I try and emphasize from a strength and conditioning perspective. I know Kathleen, you do from a swing perspective and everything like that, is let's get them out there, let's get them playing, let's getting them having fun and enjoying the game. And that ultimately from a young age builds a lot of these physical and mental characteristics that later on, when they do decide to specialize in a sport, they're ready to go. And so, when are we seeing actually that we should start that specialization?
Well, I mean, going back to what you said, I mean, one of the big drawbacks with the specialization is I think kids, when they start to get so much instruction, they lose the ability to adapt and be resilient out there. And so once you start to give people, like, this is the way you should do it, they kind of go, okay, I can only do it this way. And it really is a challenge to get them from a lesson tee onto the course, because they're out there by themselves and they have to be able to think. And I think that's another drawback. As far as specialization, I'd say, once they get towards that, those teenage years, and you guys can speak to this more, but I look at kids that come to me as 10 and 12-year-olds who've never played golf, but come from an athletic background. They're able to transition and have really quick growth within the sport. Their skill sets grow more quickly. Their mental capacity grows more quickly. They can take the failures better. Because they have played other sports, and other sports have helped them develop all these kind of systems to deal with failure or successes or injuries or teamwork, all the things that we learn from these experiences. So I'd say in their later, their early teenage years, as we're getting towards the high school years.
Yeah. Major mental component to that.
Yeah.
Right, Paul? Speak on that a little bit.
Well, I think that from my experience, kind of that early high school range is kind of where you start to see at least an ideal sort of growth perspective. I think the difficulty, though, like you've pointed out, is there is this, like, I only have one tool to fix this problem or this solution, right? It's something that I run into a lot with players that I'll work with, where they are so wrapped up in, well, my swing has to be a certain way, or I have to feel a certain way, or it has to look a certain way in order to perform at a high level. And part of my responsibility, or part of my job, is to remind them, well, no, you have to find a way to get the ball in the hole. There are different ways of doing that, even if it doesn't look pretty, right? And so I think, teaching them at a young age, what are different ways that you can kind of be creative? What are different ways that you can have fun with this goes a really long way to keep them motivated and not get burned out. I mean, that's a huge issue of early specialization, is just burning themselves out.
Well, Kathleen, so we had talked about, we're seeing a lot of these younger individuals, and we have to be honest here. It's the parents, right, that want these things for their players, their athletes, their kids. We're seeing a lot of, I would like private lessons, diving deep into, technology and numbers. What are some things that you're doing to kind of step them away from that and start teaching the parents, hey, right now, this is where the kids should be, maybe with group classes and things like that. And then later on, this is where they're going to get molded to. What are some of the things that you're doing right now?
Well, as you mentioned, I do have a number of, I really do believe in group classes for younger kids for a while before we get into privates. There are exceptions to every rule, and there are kids that really thrive in the private environment. And as long as it's balanced and the parents are balanced, then I think they can be successful. So I create kind of a small group experience. I think that way the pressure's not so great on them to be successful every week, to be the best player every week. I try to create, as Dr. Paul was saying, some environments where we may not worry about the outcome, and maybe we have a process game. And so we're keeping track of, hey, did I go through my pre-shot routine every week? Or I have a mental scorecard that I use with them. Hey, every time you have a negative thought, let's put a notch on the scorecard. And at the end, I think they're shocked at going, oh my gosh, I was so negative on every hole. And so I don't think any of us are aware of the negative thoughts that continually we struggle and fight with on the golf course, for sure. So those kind of activities. I work a lot with the parents. I have a Google share docs that I work with the parents, and how to have fun while we're playing games, and different ways to do scoring. For a putting game, for instance, rather than, did the ball go in the hole, could I get the ball to start where I wanted? Can I get it on the line that I wanted? Did I have the right speed? Did I get it into the speed box, the 12 to 18 inches behind, so that it's not always so outcome based and that we worry about the process along the way. Because I think that's where we really start to learn, if you understand the process and different ways of scoring besides score, because we all know that's what golf is about. I got that. But, some of these kids just aren't there yet, but I don't want them to walk away from the game because they can't shoot a 36. I don't know what they're going to do at 12 and 13. They're 7, 8, 9 now. I'm seeing a big difference with kids I started with 4 years ago, and where they are strength wise, mentally is a big part of it. The maturity that they're starting to bring to the classes. So,
I mean, you're speaking my language when you're talking about process and effort and attitude. I mean, that's what you want, right? You want kids to understand that, yeah, the outcome matters, but it's more about the stuff that we do day in and day out that is sustainable, right? One thing that I always try and do with my younger clients is to try and find ways to have fun. What are some activities or games that you do with your students that are kind of fun or engaging, that kind of bring them back the next time?
Whether it's chipping or putting, we play a little battleship game, where we have, different size targets out there, and, it may take 3 balls to sink that ship, and they play against each other. And it's usually in a team effort. And sometimes I'll jump in and they'll make me putt backwards, or they love when I putt with their short little putters, or I have to use a 7-iron to chip challenge them. Even on the golf course, when we play, sometimes we play just tees and greens, and so we hit tee shots and then we pick it up and we go to the green. And low score, rather than keeping a score, it's kind of like whoever had the low score gets a point. So then each one is like a do-over for them. I play a great game. It's called Spin It to Win It. And I make them spin the putter in their hands, and they have to catch it. In any way that they catch it, it might be in a weird place, they have to figure out how to putt. And they think, that they get a kick out of it because they're backwards and they're upside down and they're, whatever they're doing. It's kind of fun to see them get creative. We try to hit things over fences. We try to hit things, into telephone poles that are on the driving range. We have to watch out sometimes because sometimes we go over fences that we probably shouldn't be going over, but it's kind of fun. It's kind of like, hey, can we one hop it onto this thing to get to the next thing? What can we do? So any challenge that is kind of off the beaten track. And I tell you, in the beginning, I had some pushback from parents who are kind of like, why would you do that? Why do you care if they can only, because I'll say, hey, we're only taking 3 clubs today. We're taking 3 clubs. You have to figure it out, and try to score, and I do that a lot with my, middle school and high schoolers. And, they have these little epiphanies like, hey, I can chip with my hybrid. I'm like, yeah, you can. So it's kind of fun to see them get creative that way.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, right? Fun, right? We say the fundamentals, right? Like going back to the fundamentals of things, we have to make it fun for these young athletes in really whatever sport that they're playing, because if it's not fun, they're going to go on to something else, right? They're going to move on to something else. We're seeing a lot of, video games and stuff like that, being stuck on the phone and everything like that. But in here in the gym, we're doing things like obstacle courses, throwing things, just getting fast, getting explosive, and they love it. They're loud. And that is one, it's working on getting them that foundation to where they want to go later on. But at the same time, it's super fun. And, I would say with a lot of my junior classes, the 5 to, 11-year-olds, a lot of it is play, and probably 90, almost maybe even 95% of the stuff that we're doing in here does not look like a golf swing. And to touch on Kathleen's point is, yeah, you're gonna get that pushback from the parent, but how can we explain to them that, hey, this is setting the foundation, this is what's going to keep them playing later on in their junior career and even later on in life, right? Like we're we don't want them to burn out and not play this game, even when they're older, your 40s, 50s, 60s, right? So, let's not ruin it for them now. So.
Yeah,
Great.
no, I mean, I agree. I mean, I use my little warm up. They run around and they've got their speed sticks, and then they've got to hop over cones, and they've got to crawl under noodles. And so I want them to be athletes first, having fun, and each of them has different skill sets, and some of them are high jumpers, and some of them can balance things better. And so each of them gets to have their small victories during the day. And so then that gives them a little more confidence, because golf is really hard. So when I do little setup drills with them, I have my little samurai setup where they have their arms up and their feet together, and they have to bounce to the ball, and club goes down, and they take their steps, and they get the little bounces, and then they're ready to swing, so that it's kind of like little fun ways of doing it, and then we'll play, like a little Simon Says game to see if they can keep up with it. And it's kind of fun, and then they want to be Simon, and then I have to play, and they like tricking me, so it's kind of fun for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I agree. Burnout is a major challenge. Dr. Paul, I'm sure you can speak to this. I'm sure you've seen many of athletes over the years where, it's a shame to see a child so frustrated by a game.
Yeah, and I was actually curious for you, like, how do you work with the parents? Because on my end, I kind of explain to them, hey, I'm probably going to make your kid a better golfer. Like, that's just the reality. I'm good at what I do. I understand the mental side of golf, but it's not a perfect science, right? But I can pretty much guarantee every parent, I'm going to make them a better human being, right? The skills that I'm teaching them are sort of universal. It's a little different when you're dealing with sort of the golf swing, right? And a parent saying, well, why are you teaching them this? Why are you teaching them to be a samurai? Why are you teaching them to go under a noodle? So, like, what's that conversation like with the parents to try and remind them, hey, like, kind of stay in your lane. I'm the expert here. Like, let me do my job.
Well, I mean, it's that, I've had some parents that I have to bring out. Like, I have a parent that's always like, well, every time he's, this far off the green, he never chips it, to 2 feet. I'm like, well, you need to do the pros, like, so, it's kind of like, okay, that's totally unrealistic of what we can do. So trying to talk about playing within margins, right? It's for the higher end kids, hey, these are the margins that we're trying to play, looking at statistics, and then looking at margins, and saying, hey, they're doing better than you think that they are. If we look at it and we track them and we see where they've been, and that they have to trust me, that this is a trust game and we are all in this together. And my job is to help them to become the best that they can be. But yeah, they're constant reminders to a lot of these parents. I have a little 5-year-old that's pretty good right now. He's like, well, we want to do 2 lessons a week and Saturdays. I'm like, it's too much, and I don't have a problem saying, in my opinion, I think it's too much. I have a mother that says, hey, I'm taking my girls out of, soccer, and they're only going to do golf. And I tell her, I said, look, when they're in soccer season, their swings are better. Their legs are stronger. They're moving more explosively when they're doing soccer practice. And then, because every sport trains golf, golf doesn't train anything, right? So it's kind of like, keep using those sports. The screen's getting every sport, it has a great, way of helping golf, and really those mental challenges that we feel in golf. I feel like, working with you, Joe, when we're in the weight room, we got to push a little bit sometimes, and how to push through sometimes. So I find that they're the conversations I have, and they're continual. You're absolutely right, Dr. Paul. It's not like it's one time and they're like, oh, we're buying in. It's reminders and reminders and reminders of why we're doing this, and what is really the purpose of participating in this game, in these programs. And they do have access to not just me, they have access to Joe, they have access to my network also. So they're hearing kind of the similar things from the network that I surround myself with, that, I'm not insane here, I'm not going, oh, I'm the only one that believes this. I study articles. Every time I come across articles, that goes into my Google Doc thing. If I have a talk that I can send them to with Joe, or if you're having a talk, I'm like, go to these talks, go participate and hear it from the specialists and what's out there. And TPI has been a great resource for something like that, where it's not just golf professionals. We have medical professionals and fitness professionals and performance people, so that they're hearing it from multiple sources.
I like
one of the things that I do is and I can do it with any of my programs on any given day, is I try and correlate some of the exercises to the golf swing. Where if we're doing some jumps, some single leg lateral jumps or vertical jumps, or throws or whatever, I say, oh, okay, well, did you see us do that move? Okay, well, in the golf swing, we really like that because, and then I start allowing them to see for themselves, oh yeah, like, doesn't look like the golf swing, but actually that's what their swing coach wanted them to be doing. And you know what? They're doing it in a fun, way through exercise and whatnot, and they're laughing and they're having fun and everything like that. And so, I think that for me there is the correlation. Otherwise, like, we really wouldn't be doing it. And so really trying to get them to do that. And Kathleen, you had said it's ongoing. One of the things that I've noticed, and this is what I'm going to finish on, is it trickles in. It trickles in. You just keep being persistent with it, explaining the benefits, and then over time we get that buy-in. And that's really what we're looking for, because then, that parent who has bought in is going to talk to the friend who also plays golf. And then now it's like, oh yeah, I'm seeing this benefit because we're doing these, these mental skills or these fun games with our group lessons or within the fitness realm as well. And that's how we're going to spread it out, little by little, one at a time, and by doing things like this. So with that said, I think that was really, really good. One of the things that I do want to do, Coach Kathleen, if you could just once again give the viewers your information on how they can get a hold of you, websites, phone numbers. So if they have any questions, they can get a hold of you.
Oh, thanks, Joe. The best way to get in touch with me is through my website. You can schedule lessons. You can get on my subscribing list. You can contact me, and it's www.kmrgolfinc.com. So www.kmrgolfinc.com. So that's the best thing, and it has all the academy. It has my virtual stuff, and that's the best way to get in touch with me. So thank you for that opportunity.
Very nice. Well, thank you for coming on to our very first episode of the Doc and Jock Show. So excited for this. And that concludes our first episode. Thank you very much.
Well, I have a question though. How do people find you guys, and how are they going to find the podcast? How can I share it?
Go ahead, Joe.
Yes. Yeah. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take it down here. We're gonna edit it a little bit, and then myself, Dr. Ashbrook, and Kathleen, we're gonna send it out in our newsletters, and we're gonna put it up on our social media. So if you're watching this, you're gonna get it from one of us. So check out for those newsletters, check out for that email, social media, send it off to your friends if this is a topic that you've been thinking about.